Hello everybody, thanks for joining me today. I'm Jackie and I create mosaics using sea glass. And today I'm going to talk to you about 3 frequently asked questions that I get. Number 1, do you use grout? 2, do you use resin? And 3, do you use any kind of finishing spray? So today I'm going to answer those 3 questions for you. So I frequently get asked, do I use grout? Do I use resin? Do I use finishing spray? And the short answer to all 3 of those questions is no. I don't use any of those products in my completed sea glass mosaics. But I do think that all 3 of those questions deserve a little bit of a longer explanation. So I'm going to give you a bit of a longer explanation on each of them. So I'll start with the first one. Do I use grout? And I don't use grout, but I did try grout once on a very early project long ago. So the only time I ever used grout was on this project. And what I did here was I had these broken pieces of mirror that kind of looked like sails. I thought they were kind of cool. And then I put a bunch of sea glass pieces in and some shells, and then I grouted around them. And this was years ago, and it doesn't look any different today than it did when I first made it. And, it's not bad. It's a thing that hangs at the entrance to my cottage, and it has a little place to put notes and keys and everything. So it's still here, but it's not my favorite look, so I haven't done it since. So if you're wanting to use grout, I would see 4 advantages of doing that. Number 1, your sea glass is never going to fall off. Once you put it on there with grout, it's there and it's staying, and you might want that. The second advantage is that your whole finished piece is going to lay flatter because the grout is going to come up more to the surface of your sea glass, and it's going to be flatter. Say if you wanted to do something that you wanted the surface to be flat, then there would be an advantage to using it. The other thing, it's going to be less dusty because there's less little crevices for the dust to get into. And the fourth thing is that you just may prefer the look. So if any of those things are really important to you, then I would say go for it, try it with the grout. So the disadvantages of using grout, I see 4 disadvantages. Number 1, it's a lot fussier to use. It adds another step in completing the mosaic, and it can be kind of messy. Number 2, the thing that I really like about hanging a sea glass piece like this in the window is that it lets quite a bit of light through. And if you have all of those areas between the sea glass all covered with grout, it's going to let less light through. And personally, I don't really like that. I want lots of light to come through. The third disadvantage that I see is that I really wouldn't want the grout to be covering the sides of all the sea glass. I'm a bit of a fanatic about sea glass. I just love it. I love the look of it. And I want to cover as little of my sea glass as possible. So if I had grout in here, it covers a lot of the sides of the sea glass. And the fourth disadvantage for me is that I really just don't prefer the look. I prefer the look of a piece like this without the grout. So I'm not going to use grout. But if you want to use grout, I'm sure you'll have no difficulty getting some good instructional videos on how to use grout. So the second question that I frequently get asked is, do I use resin? And I don't use resin, and I don't have an example to show you because I've never even tried it. And you might say, Jackie, give it a try, you may like it, but I haven't tried it. To me, the advantages of using resin, there's 2 main advantages. One would be that you're going to really seal your sea glass onto your piece of glass and it's never falling off. And that may be exactly what you want. And the second advantage would be you just really might prefer the look. So I've seen lots of sea glass pieces that are done with resin and they're lovely, and you might look at those and say, yeah, that's the look I'm going for. And if you are interested in that, there's lots of instructional videos on how to use resin, and I would say go for it. For me, there's the disadvantage of using resin. Number 1, it's messy and it's more work. But the biggest disadvantage for me is that I just really don't like the look, because what happens when you put resin on is that you take away all the frostiness of your sea glass. And I love the frostiness of the sea glass, and the resin is just going to make it look clear and shiny. So if you like that, great. I don't. So I've never even tried it because I don't like the look. So the third question that I frequently get asked is, do you use any sort of finishing spray? Because sometimes when people look at my sea glass pieces, they say, wow, your sea glass looks so shiny. You must have some sort of spray on it. And I have tried finishing spray before. My first couple of projects I did with finishing spray. So here's an example where I did use a finishing spray. What I did here was I sprayed all the pieces of sea glass before putting them into the mosaic. And I made this piece a lot of years ago, and it still looks really shiny. The finishing spray has held really well, and the pieces kind of look like they look when you find them on the shore when they're all wet. One thing I was kind of disappointed about was that when I laid these pieces out before I put them into the mosaic, and I found the aqua in particular looked really stunning in the sky. And then when I sprayed them, it took away all the frostiness of the sea glass, and I lost some of the pattern there. It still looks good, but it doesn't look as good as I think it looked before it was sprayed. So the advantage of using finishing spray is that it's going to keep that shiny look of your sea glass. The disadvantage is that if your piece is hanging in the window, because I did also do a piece that hung in the window, and I found that the heat from the sunlight really dried the finishing spray out, and then it left kind of a film type of a look on top of the sea glass, and I didn't like that look. And the other disadvantage is that I just really don't prefer the look. I really prefer the look when you have a piece like this. There's no finishing spray on the sea glass. The sea glass is all just the way it was when I found it at the beach. And what happens if you don't put any finishing spray on it, it doesn't take away any of the natural frostiness. And the other thing that I find is that on a moist day, like today it's kind of drizzly out, so it's moist, and the sea glass looks really shiny, but on a really dry day, it's going to look drier and frostier, so it really changes depending on how much moisture is in the air. And I love that. I love it's like an ever-changing art piece in a sense, because it looks different when it's shiny than when the sea glass pieces are all dry and frosty. So that is why I don't use finishing spray. So I hope this has been really helpful for you, and it's given you some insight into why I do the things that I do with my sea glass mosaics. If you have any other questions that you'd like to see me address in the video, please post them below, and I'll try to do a video on it and present you with some more background information on why I do what I do. And in the meantime, until next time, happy sea glass hunting.